We're here at Farmgate talking with Jim and the rest of the group here. You're located about half hour north outside of Canada, Ottawa area.
Yeah, still in the city of Ottawa, but
You've got, and you said, about 150 trees here, a handful of different varieties that you're working with, and then you've also, because you've grown so much over the last year and a bit, you've picked up some other support from different groups.
Yeah. So we offered a program called the Apple Stewardship Program, where apple trees kind of get a free pass. No one cuts an apple tree down, but it doesn't mean they have the time or the skill to look after them. And every farm. Every farm usually had a few. So we kind of did it as a community outreach thing. We thought we were planting a lot more trees ourselves, but we thought, it's a way to get some fruit. And we thought we'd get a couple dozen trees. And we ended up stopping the program this year at 300. So we spent about 6 weeks this spring with a double-sized crew pruning. And we spent about the same amount of time picking all this fruit. And it'll bear fruit in a few years. I mean, these trees have not seen love for a few. But it's really neat because there's some apple varieties nobody seems to know what they are. So it used to be that every region had their own trees, right? So I know there's an apple called the Lantern Greenie. I don't think I have any in my care, but but every region had their own. And so several of these trees we'll see how they go. So you'll see when we get to the cidery, we're going back to doing some small batch ciders because I don't know what these apples taste like. So we're gonna do all these, keep them separate for initially, figure it out, and then I can figure out the blends just like we did when we learned to make cider in the first place.
And when did that start? How long ago was that?
Probably about 6 or 7 years ago. I do remember the very first batch. We said, we usually just kind of wing things and going to get going. And we said, we're not going to do that. We're going to go on the internet. We're going to figure out the right way to do it. Did some reading, got a recipe, and the batch was horrible. We just ended up, this is the only batch I've ever dumped. And it was the very first one. But we persisted, and it got better. And since then, we've done some formal training at Cornell and made a lot more cider, and our game has got a lot better. But yeah. So it's about 6 years. Yeah, it's a week-long course, and you'd wonder how much you're going to get out of a week. But for us, I wouldn't recommend going cold. Like I would make cider for a couple of years first. I think we got more out of the course than our classmates. That some of them had not made any cider before, and they were just learning. And so they do many levels of courses with the same teaching staff. So I think you get more out of it if you had a few goes at it yourself.
And we found that that's been pretty standard with a lot of the people here in the sector that have been doing that. The extra little bit of training after starting in for a little while on the passion side of things has really helped them with the work what they've done going through. So you're sort of now 2.5, 3 years sort of into more of a commercial exploration of things, or?
One and a bit. We got licensed officially last April, so April 2017. And so we had, last year was our first partial year of selling, and this is our first full year of selling. So we had kept some juice, and so we were able in our first year to use some juice from the year before. But really, it's so last year. This year we do 2 lines of cider. What happened is we didn't, you start these things, you just don't know how fast they're going to go. And I think being local and I think the timing's right for cider in this area. I mean, cider tends to follow the craft brewing. And so it just went a lot faster than we thought. And, you never know. Family says they like your cider, and friends, but what are they going to say, right? So it's until you start, you don't know. And so we sold out, as you know, by about April, we were done all of our estate cider. We could see it coming, and so we started making cider. Our fastest cider batch is about 4 months, and so we could see around Christmas we're going to be in trouble. So we started making some cider with locally sourced apple juice, and that's what we're selling right now. And we'll have 3 to 4 times. I think we'll end up about 4 times as much estate cider this year from the 2018 crop than we did from 17.
And your output right now is essentially just the market, correct?
Yeah, and we sell online as well. So and we sell in pubs now. So we just started selling. We didn't do any pubs really last year to speak of. We did a guest tap at the Bar Lupulus, I think, in November. But now we're a regular at the Ridge Rock down here, and the Cheshire Cat, and the Whitewater Rafting, and we've got yes. They are rafters. Yeah, you're right. And there's a queue. There's lots of people quite interested. It's a lower margin business, but what we're trying to avoid is keeping as much as we can away from the LCBO. Pubs, you have to go through the LCBO. There's no choice. But selling direct to online and farmers markets, you don't have to pay the LCBO, which makes a big difference to your bottom line.
Are you large enough here to be able to do your own retail store on property?
We do. We have our own retail store, and it's not very grand at all, but we do. In fact, to sell in farmers markets, you have to have a retail store. There's 4 levels of licensing. It's that one unfortunate part about the business is I probably should spend a day a week doing paperwork. It's just you have to do federal filings and provincial filings. You have to file with the LCBO. You have to register each farm market you go. You have to keep track of every piece of fruit you pick, all the juice, everything you throw away. It's tons and tons. It's a controlled substance, and there's just tons and tons of paperwork. But if you're going to do it, you got to do it.
And it sounds like you've run into the 2 challenges that we've seen over the last 2 years. One is product availability because of the interest, and the second is those legal requirements of trying to find a way to be able to make it so it's a viable opportunity going forward. Do you work as well on the side, or is this sort of what has become full-time?
Well, we did till the new year. I quit my job at Christmas, and so it's a family affair. My 2 sons, one's trained as a brewer, so yeah, he's just a natural fit for it, and the other fellow was looking for a way out of Toronto, so he quit his job as well. So there's 3 of us full-time. Then anybody that comes on the farm gets roped in. So and we have a few part-timers. One son's partner does a lot of the production and sales work. Another one does a lot of the marketing. So it's and then in peak season, like pruning and harvest, we hire locally as well. Usually friends of people that are looking for stuff, or there's an amazing number of people that are well trained, have good jobs, but still want to come and pick apples. So. Mm-hmm.
And of course, a couple of dogs around as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, we can continue wandering if you want that way, and that's good.
Yeah.
As the dogs eat off the ground.
So this is probably like some of the ones that self-propagated for you. The great big guy behind you. Yeah. So that's it makes a really interesting apple. A lot of the wild apples are highly astringent, which is good for cider. As are these guys. These are russets. And we have Northern Spies down below. Both of them have some good amount of tannins, and it was a good fluke to plant those. Again, like I said, it was an original plant to make cider. So
it just
does. Is there a reason you've let those get so much larger than these?
Those are semi-dwarfs, and the rootstock is a bigger rootstock. And so these guys this guy's as big as he's ever going to get. This is a dwarf.
Oh, really?
He'll get bushier, but he's not going to get any taller. And the advantage of these guys is you can probably, when it's all full, get 3 or 4 times the fruit. But you can see how much easier it is to pick. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the big commercial orchards, what they do now is they plant them at 5-foot intervals. They put them on a trellis like grapes. They train them flat, and then you can just walk down and pick the fruit. You don't have ladders or any of the hassle like that.
Yeah, and we saw that at the research sessions that they were doing in Simcoe. We went to go visit that, and you could see the very specifics of the angles of what they were putting on and the paperwork of how many you need for size to get how much out to be viable and all that kind of stuff.
And
as
you have
well.
to irrigate, and it's very, very almost impossible to do that organically. So it's but if you're in the commercial business, it makes a huge difference. It's just absolutely huge because the market's pretty fickle. Honeycrisp is really big this year, and 4 or 5 years later it's something else. And so those dwarf trees, you can go from nothing to full production in about 5 or 6 years if you throw them on the trellis like that. But we're all the trees we're planting will be either this size or that size. So they're very manageable. You can pick everything off a step ladder. And I was saying one of the things you get away with when you're making cider is you can tree ripen, so you get better apples, and you can use your windfalls if you're careful about cleaning up underneath. And you can also shake them, like you already do.
Yeah.
Because a bruise, they're going to get awfully bruised when they go through the crusher. So a little bruise on them, it doesn't really make a lot of difference.
As long as you use them pretty quickly. Eh?
Yeah. So when we shake them, we usually crush. This year, because we're working at it full time, we process that usually the day. If we shake them, the day we shake them.
Oh, okay.
And these trees we hand picked. It's just because they're so dense, you can get the productivity up. You can pick, many bushels an hour. And we're still kind of working through the productivity side of it, but we're really trying to do it. Anybody we hire, we don't want to give them a living wage. Like we don't want to try to, a lot of the commercial guys have to use offshore below standard wage to make things work, and we're trying to. Cider's got a little bit more margin, so we're hoping that we can with the people we hire, we can hire at or above minimum wage for sure.
Yeah.
So what you see here is almost anything that can hold cider around this place is holding cider. We started in our basement, but we're largely out of our basement now. And this was my machine shop, but now it's the main part where we do our cider. We're building a second. No dogs in.
Oh, Sterling, hey,
Sweetie,
hey, Sterling, come here.
don't play with your friends outside. People don't like dog hair in their cider.
Yeah.
It could be a specialized one. You guys can come in. Dog, stay out.
Nope. Nope. Go on. Stay. Don't pretend like you don't know what I'm talking about.
So the technique we use is a barrel age technique. So these are all stainless steel barrels, primarily made for maple syrup. This is for long-term maple syrup storage. And there's two kinds. One's what you can see where it kind of has a snap lock. You can take the lid right off, those ones, which are really nice for doing fermentation because they get all gunky. They're really easy to clean. And then these ones we typically use for secondary fermentation. We're using them for both right now because we've got more juice and we know where to put it. And we're trying to do a lot of smaller batches, as I said. And then we also, somewhere around here, we have these little 23-liter ones. And when we get to the shipping container, you'll see we have dozens of those. And so for a pressing, let's say from a new tree, I keep 23 liters. They're all categorized. I keep track of them, do the chemistry, so I know what I got, and then we'll do blending and decide what we want to do with them later. And some of the people I think will be quite keen to have cider that came from their tree on their property. So, but ultimately, when we scale it, what I really want to know is, okay, what you do is you take, 4 of those and 3 of those, and that makes an interesting cider. And then what we do is you mix it at the fruit level rather than at the juice level. It's just a lot easier than cleaning in a whole bunch of small vessels like that. But that's how we started, 23 liters, and then moved up to hundreds. We have some conicals outside, which it was a plastic. It was so Soviet experiment, it's harder to get it clean. So you get variable results. And it was hard to get a seal on them, so we're getting air leaking in. And then up to 200s, and then you'll see outside we have big plastic ones that have really good seals, totes that we do 1,000-liter batches now as well.
So what is it you expect to total for the year?
So for this year, it'll be, let me do the math in my head, it'll be north of 10,000 liters this year. Probably about 11,000 liters. And next year it'll be between 20 and 30,000 liters. Yeah, so for us it was about a 10x jump. We were at the year before we were about 1,500 liters, and then a jump up to into the teens is about a 10x, and then about a 2 to 3x, and then eventually we're going to start to slow down. But you need to get up to kind of that scale to make the math work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's So the kind of the process we go through is we do primary, and what you can see is we use these are all triclover fittings that was developed for the milk industry. It's a sanitary fitting. I can show you here. It just it doesn't have any. It's really easy to get clean because it has. This one's empty, so don't care. It has a little seal, stainless surface, and it just clamps on. And they can take up to a couple hundred psi, so it's really secure, and it's really easy to get clean. It's just not cheap.
Yeah.
So I think the person that does best out of us going into the cider business are the stainless steel manufacturers, and that's why I was sweating it a bit with all the nonsense going on between Canada and the U.S. But I think that's maybe over. We'll see. But we stopped buying. We actually just snuck in ahead. But these ones came from the States. We couldn't source them in Canada with a removable head. But and you can do some neat things with stainless. These guys you can pressurize up to about 10 psi. These guys are 20. So if you just shut them off, this right now I'm letting the CO2 blow off. But if I shut it off, you can naturally carbonate. Mm-hmm. It just kind of pressurizes. You want to get it right, or blowing up a barrel would not be a great idea. So I've got one set up here. You can't really see it, but it's got a pressure gauge and a pressure relief valve. So I just dial up the pressure if I want, and you got to do the calculation, and that takes a little bit of mucking around because when you filter it, you lose CO2. So you got to make sure you get the right amount and turn it on at the right time. But anyways, it's like a lot of things in life. It's just you got to do it a few times before you figure it out.
And you're focusing on sort of 4 or 5 different standard finished products and then maybe some specialty ones that you're pulling out as well?
Yeah, right now we have 5 that we have right now. But if you looked at it, the total kind of, the whole kind of list of them, we probably have about a dozen. And we're still kind of finding which ones people really like. So for instance, we're playing around with, last year we played around with maple syrup one as a low volume. Now it's a standard. Likewise, we did one with apple honey and we played around with it and then we got the balance we like and it's a standard. This year I'm playing around with rhubarb. I crushed and pressed rhubarb, mixed it with apple, mixed it with maple syrup, mixed it with honey, done a whole bunch of things. We haven't decided what we're going to do with it, but it's really good. Yeah.
And then I'm assuming that's mostly sourced either around the farm or neighbors or close by.
It's all local, yeah. So the rhubarb was from here and my son's farm. And all the apples and the estate stuff is ours. And then the juice, when we buy juices, we're buying from Halls in Brockville. And the maple syrup is either ours, because we have dark maple syrups we make here, the way we make it, or we've sourced some from Fulton's and local beekeepers for the honey. And yeah, so it's all local, yeah.
Excellent. Well, I'll put my phone away so we can continue our tour uninterrupted. But if people want more information on yourself, where can they go to get that information?
Our website's the easiest way, so that's farmgatecider.ca.
Thank you so much for your time.
No problems.